The thing about the arranged marriages, it's interesting because nowadays everything has changed. I don't think anybody does that anymore, the arranged marriages.
Raj told us the story of his marriage. It wasn't necessarily an arranged marriage, but at the same time, he had already finished school. I think he said in India, had moved to the United States, and worked here for several years, and he still was not married. When he went to go visit them in India, everyone wanted him to meet someone. So, in a way, right, Leslie, he's told us this story
Yes,
once. It
and
was,
also there are a number of cultures where arranged marriages are still the norm, even
yeah.
now. Not so much traditional U.S. families, if there is such a thing, but a number of cultures, marriages are still arranged. And it's interesting to me. I love that Raj has had such different experiences and brings that to our group. I really find it fascinating.
Yeah. I loved when he was telling us that they left them there at the restaurant so that they could talk and meet each other. He says, but half an hour later, everybody was there, everybody listening to them and watching them. And it felt like My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Have y'all seen those?
Yeah.
Those are,
Yes, yes.
but only in India. But
Yeah.
he made it sound like hilarious. But
Wow.
thank God they're still together. It's been over
Yes,
20
and they
some years, I
seem
think.
so happy, and that's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying they're arranged or whatever, but here in this city, you know how we have people who are very well off, and because I got to meet some of these people because my kids went to private school, so we kind of started to mingle with these people, and they all knew each other since they were kids, like most of these couples who were well off from both sides, right? And they knew each other since they were kids. They hung out with each other. Their parents knew each other. And it just seemed like it was an expected thing for them to marry that person. So if they went off to college and they made other friends, whatever, but then they would come home and they'd marry that person. And because they were from similar backgrounds, they were landowners or business owners. And so it's not, I guess, not strictly arranged, but it was like an expectation. And then I noticed that, and we noticed it because, like I said, we were from outside, and then we went into that situation, and a lot of their kids, I mean, they all went off to college. These are my sons and my daughter's friends, and but they're still like, now they're pairing off like boyfriend and girlfriend, and their kids that they grew up with, that they went to school with, and the parents know each other, and they're happy about it. So it's kind of sad in a way. The reason why we know this, because my son, make sure he doesn't hear me. I think he got to know this one girl, and she went to a private high school. He did not, but he hung out with those kids, and every time she's in town, he goes out with her and he goes to visit her, all kind of stuff. And my husband told him one time, he goes, son, she's not going to end up with you. And he's like, I never said. He goes, I'm just telling you, she's not going to end up with you. Her parents probably have plans, because like she's not going to college. They're well off. They have a house here. They have a house in Bernie, I think. She got to, right when she got out of high school, she traveled to Europe, and she stayed there for a couple of months. And so he told her, that she might like you, but she also knows she's not going to end up with you, because you're not of that background. So
Sad that still exists.
that still exists to a degree. And
It's actually a modern take of arranged marriage. This is still arranged marriage, but it's a modern take. So it's still happening, but in different way. It's still happening. And it's in a more
subtle,
kind of like subtle, like setting it up, like when you set up someone on a blind date, and you make it so that they are like, everything is like ready for them, like ready to just take off. The ideal situation, they set it up, and it's sad. It is sad because that's not their soulmate. That's not their soulmate. And actually they might be even setting up that relationship for failure because it's not their true soulmate. Like, it's not, I totally disagree, but it's sad that it is still happening.
It does, and like I said, we saw it firsthand, and I mean, and some of these people, some of these parents, you know, we know them, and at first I thought, oh wow, you know, they got together and their father owned this land and her father owned the land next to it, and my husband told me, he goes, you know, that they were probably pushed together since they were young because that's the way they keep everything in the family. They wouldn't want him to marry someone else, and then that goes to her, and I'm like,
Kind of like how like the nobles used to trade like their daughters and whatever, like the kings. Now it's like CEOs instead of kings, basically.
yeah, that's true. Like, yeah. But like Debbie said, they don't come right out and say it is arranged for you, but they do throw the people together at every opportunity, get them, you know, just always talk to each other, and then it's just kind of like, oh, it's expected.
The plausible deniability, I think they call it. Like, no, we didn't mean for them to get together. It just kind of happened because we pushed them all the time. Right? But it was an accident. Yeah, like
Yeah, they
awesome.
want to make it seem as, you know, like random as possible, but yet it isn't random at all. They've been pushing them together all this time, so that's really
Well,
interesting.
like Debbie said, I wonder how many of those marriages actually are long-lasting marriages, and that would be
Right.
I mean,
something
the ones I've
interesting.
seen, the ones I know of, I mean, like the people that I know, I mean, like you said, I don't know if they're soulmates, but they actually do
They'll
stay
stay together.
together because there's a lot of other interests involved besides just them. I mean, I know there were several couples at the private school where I taught where they actually, you know, were divorced, but the majority of them, I mean, they don't even sometimes vacation together. Like the wife goes somewhere and the husband is somewhere else, but
Wow.
they're still together. That's really
But you
strange.
know, this is an interesting conversation in terms of writing, and not just period pieces where arranged marriages were the norm, but writing for today's public. There is that, and it's still going on. Conflict. What better way in some stories to build conflict than having a situation where maybe the hero or the heroine has to choose, you know, whether to go with the person he or she loves, or whether to follow the family's wishes and marry for convenience. Then there are the thing about whether or not they last. Marriages today, so many don't last. I don't care what the social background is. You know, I met people when I was working, not just as a teacher, selling insurance. I sold travel insurance, and I had jobs. I worked briefly in a travel agency, and there were some pretty callous, I'm sure men too, but mostly I spoke to women. And they'd say, I'm marrying so and so for a year or two. And then I'm divorcing because really all I want is security. And I don't think I can spend the rest of my life with them. And that seemed really harsh. I suppose one way to consider it is it being practical, and because someone say, no, there's love doesn't last anyway. That's all, you know, a bunch of baloney. And there was such a callous attitude among some of them that it really surprised me. And so in a way, we haven't come that far from the times of arranged marriages. Maybe sometimes people know better than we do if we're not willing even to give, you know, a relationship a chance. But there's so many ways to approach a story like that. And so I think it's going to be a fascinating story, and it will relate to a lot of people. And also, I think what you said about people kind of arranging, even now, society, when I came to Laredo, I was very surprised at the classism, because I just assumed I came from, I've said this to the whole group before. I grew up in segregated Georgia. Now, my parents were Yankees, and so I was a Yankee by default. And I know that doesn't sound like a big deal because, you know, old history, not in rural Georgia. We didn't have many people who spoke to us because we were Yankees. And I kept getting turned down for roles in school plays featuring Southern characters because I had a Yankee accent back then, according to them. But the thing is that the classism, when I came here to Laredo, I would hear Mexican Americans talking about other Mexican Americans in a way that it appalled me, because they say things, and I'll probably slaughter the Spanish, but they say things like, no, tiene uno pa puesto en la cara en la frente. Have you all heard that phrase?
Yes.
I'm
They use it a lot in Mexico. Yeah.
right. And I just was like, what is this? I mean, I like everyone, and here you all are showing so much favoritism toward people of wealth. And so it's kind of a human thing in a way, and that adds conflict to a story. So there's so many ways to go with a story like that.
That reminds me, there's also this other kind of marriages that people marry a Mexican person just so that they can
Become a citizen.
so that they can get their
Citizenship.
papers,
Yeah.
their
Citizenship
citizenship.
papers.
Yes, that's another kind of like an arranged marriage, but really they don't really last. They just go through that and get their papers done. That's it.
Yeah, they're just superficial marriages,
Yes.
basically, based on superficial ideas and
But-
pretensions of just,
That's
it's just
true.
air.
However, I was married for 43 or 47 years to somebody from Mexico. I was disowned when I married him, kicked out by my family. And people thought, undoubtedly, in fact, I heard it from this redheaded, I don't want to use the B word here, this unpleasant redheaded woman who worked in the consulate in Monterey, who said, well, how many children are you going to have to give him to meet the qualifications? I mean, why did he marry you? For how many children? For how much money? And I mean, I was so mad because at that time I'd already been disowned, kicked out of my family, not allowed to talk to my brothers or sisters. And everybody assumed the worst, that it was an arranged marriage. He just wanted papers. It wasn't. Okay. It's hard to explain. It also wasn't the smartest marriage in the world, but it lasted 43 years. And so, again, there's so much out there for stories, and conflict is important. There are a lot of ways to find conflict.
Yes.
And there are a lot of ways to resolve it too. So I know we're all looking forward to reading Anna's novel.